NetSparker, the developers of a comprehensive automated web security platform that includes web vulnerability scanning, assessment, and management. NetSparker's desktop and cloud-based security solutions employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities and provides a proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at securityweekly.com/NetSparker. Qualys has brought together vulnerability management and patch management, letting security teams discover vulnerabilities and apply patches immediately, all within a single, unified app. Sign up for a free trial of Qualys VMDR, vulnerability management, detection, and response today at securityweekly.com/Qualys.
Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Quick announcement, Security Weekly is an official media partner for the virtual Black Hat 2020. To register and save $200 off your registration, visit securityweekly.com/summer camp 2020. That's securityweekly.com/summer camp 2020. Save $200 off Black Hat this year, which is an all-virtual event. Using the discount code 20SecWeekBH. Alongside Black Hat, we'll be running our conference micro interviews. You've guessed it, virtually in an event we call Security Weekly Virtual Hacker Summer Camp, August 3rd through the 4th. Options and pricing are available. If you want to sponsor a micro interview, if you work for a vendor and would like to do that, make sure you reserve your slot now. Get your message out to Black Hat attendees. Tell everyone why your product is great, perhaps better than everyone else's. John Snyder is the co-founder and chief executive officer of AGNES Intelligence, a forensic AI firm that has perfected the application of unsupervised machine learning. He is the pioneer of the law and data science movement, which focuses on merging data science tools with legal procedure. Mr. Snyder is a graduate of Harvard Law School and Brown University. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
John, I didn't. Did you get a degree?
Didn't you go to Brown, Paul?
No, I did not go to.
You worked there.
Some people do say that. I did not attend Brown University. I worked for Brown University for about 7 years. It was a wonderful time there. Great people. I learned a lot and got to visit most of the departments on campus, which was absolutely fascinating. So, John, did you studied at Brown University, correct?
I did. I spent 4 glorious years up on College Hill, your part of the world, and it was a lot of fun.
Wait, what years were you there?
I was there 95 to 99.
Yeah, just before I started there. Yeah, started about in 2001. We just missed each other.
What did you do?
I did IT security. I basically built their security program from the ground up, starting in 2001.
Where'd you work at? Did you work in the computer center?
Watson. I worked in the Watson building, corner of Waterman and Brook Street.
Center.
The Watson Center. That's where I started. We ended up moving to other places, but it was really awesome to be in the Watson building because on the upper floors of the Watson building, what many you probably know, many don't, is where a lot of the early Apple engineers originated from. It was a famous instructor, a professor whose first name was Andy, which the character Andy from Toy Story is rumored to be named after.
Is that Andy Van Dam?
Andy Van Dam. Yes, very smart individual, of course.
By the way, this is, if anybody wants to know AGNES Intelligence, this is Agnes right here.
Hi, Agnes.
And it's almost bedtime.
She's like, I don't want to be on a podcast, Daddy. I want to go to bed.
Hey, Agnes, you're on a podcast with thousands and thousands of people watching. What do you think? Can you say hi to everybody?
Hi.
And tell what your friend Alex does.
Kubernetes and DevOps.
That was awesome.
You're laughing, and the Zens are laughing.
You know what? I'm gonna just give me a few seconds.
Go ahead.
Ooh, it's mommy time.
There's some people in our field that can't say Kubernetes. But Agnes can. She looks to be about maybe 2 or 3-ish. Like a 3-ish.
2-ish, yeah.
2-ish, 3-ish.
She's got the intelligence.
It's
fantastic. Not just a clever name.
I'm curious to ask John how we got to start in information security. Having been at Brown before we really had much in the way of a formal security program at the time. bringing back lots of memories of working. He's trying to get his headphones on. John, I was just saying, bringing back lots of memories when I first started at Brown University, right there in the center of campus, in corner of Waterman and Brook, of course, is awesome. But how did you get your start in information security?
Well, actually, I got to ask you one more question about Brown, because you've walked around the campus, of course.
All 144 acres, my friend.
All right, and so you know what they call Patriots Court, that part by the Ratty?
Yes.
And there's all the frats?
Yes.
And there's one that has a big giant porch swing.
Yes.
I built that.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, that's right in the main square. Like you walk through the famous gates, right? And it's in that section of campus, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there's a big porch swing, and that was I built that in 1996. That was my frat pledge class project.
Oh,
so we built
awesome.
these gigantic porch swings, and thank God, I actually about 5 or 6 years ago, I paid to buy the materials to rebuild it, because I was looking at it, and it was like 20 years later, and these kids were swinging on it like crazy, and I'm like, I know who built that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, no.
So wait, what were you studying at Brown at that?
Which house?
Aside from fraternities, what were you studying at the in porch swing building?
You're gonna laugh, but I ended up majoring in history, and I went to law school. And I didn't have any sense that I was going to be a tech person at all. In fact, I graduated law school. I went to a big firm. I practiced there for 7 years. I then started my own firm, just sort of a New York City trial boutique law firm, and tried a lot of cases. And it was only sort of, I'd always kind of had in the back of my mind, I had an understanding that, our legal system and our ability to handle cases, was going to require, data systems, because we're just generating so much data, and it's impossible to go through it. And I always kind of figured somebody else would build it. And then, like 2015, I started representing some tech people and ended up representing an AI company, and got to know what AI was, and met a bunch of data scientists, and one thing led to another. And in 2018, with my partner John McCartney, I was a 30-year data scientist, just expert in unsupervised machine learning, and we started AGNES. And it's been 2.5 years. We have a product. So yeah, it's been quite a journey.
That's awesome. Had you always been interested in tech, John?
I'd been interested in it from afar, but I sort of, I went to law school, and so that was sort of what I did early in my career. To me, and it's kind of interesting. I was thinking about this the other day, but part of the reason that I went to law school, and you guys may be able to relate to this, how often have you wanted to do something in a business environment or a corporate setting, and you can't do it, and the reason is because of legal, right? And it's sort of like it ends the conversation, because if you don't have a law degree, you're not even qualified to debate the issue, right? And so I just hated anything where it was like, the answer was shut up, And so I said, I'm going to go to law school so nobody can ever play that card on me. And so I did. And
you did this after Brown, right? So you're talking after like year 2000. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I graduated Brown. I went straight to law school and, pushed through. But yeah. And then what brought me to tech was, I realized that it was the most exciting thing happening in the world right now. It's put it this way. If you want to change the world, like if that's something you want to do and you have a clear idea of how you want to change the world, the easiest way to do it, like, I mean, you could go run for Senate and try to convince people and you spend the rest of your life and you'll still never do it, right? Or you can build a piece of technology that makes it happen.
That's very prolific, John, because you think about Steve Jobs at Apple and so many others, right? And their influences on the world were through technology. You graduating Harvard Law School, you had a lot of options when you graduated, right? To have a very nice career in some field of law, right? But to have that realization that tech is really the way to change the world, I think is really prolific.
You know, so, before the segment, on the last segment, you asked a question, and it was something about AI and its significance. And one dimension of it that people don't often think about, I would say it's probably the most important issue in the world, is not how the AI works, but what the AI gets applied to. Mm-hmm. In other words, over the next 5, 10, 15 years, human beings are going to become much, 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 much better at doing certain things. And the question is which things and in what order and who decides. I mean, right now, what do people actually use AI for today? You know, surveilling the population, selling ad space.
Do you put voice assistants in that category? I feel like it's an offshoot, right? Like it's a natural language processing more so as an offshoot of AI, right?
I think of it as I would say it's an AI tool, but not an AI system.
Yeah, agreed.
Like there's a whole bunch of widgets you can put in, you know, a paragraph of prose, and it'll tell you what your personality is. I mean, those are all technically AI, but you know they do, you know, just one little thing.
Very specific. Like I can use it to turn the lights on and off in my house, right? But it's very specific use case, and that is somewhat of a convenience, but. To say that it's life-changing, I mean, I still have light switches, right? I can still go on an app on my phone and control it, right? So, like, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, one of the things that we're probably going to build, I think, with you guys is we're going to build a platform with every episode of the podcast. And what it'll do is actually, it's kind of cool. If you give me a minute, I'll just explain what it does. Yeah. So it's a cloud-based platform, but we can also do it on-prem. Either way, you ingest massive amounts of audio, video data. I'm talking like millions of hours. Every single raw audio or video file, you take the sound, the audio file, and you transcribe it. You make a transcript. You index it.
So we do this with Pornhub.
You could, but it would create. You know, when I have a whole
so
bunch
many
of
oohs and ahs, right?
Credits, maybe I'll do it just as a lark. But what it does, it's pretty cool because imagine with a traditional keyword search, right? You know, if you have 1,000 items and you do a keyword search, it finds 20 or 30 and you can eventually find it. But what if you have 10 million or 100 million or 1 billion items, right? And you do a keyword search. Oh, congratulations, you have 4.5 million hits. You know, what do you do then? And so what we figured out was to run the search to get the hits. We got our 2.5 million hits. And then we use concept clustering and unsupervised machine learning to basically, tell the reviewer what's in that 4 million hits. And then literally just give them a table of contents on the left that they can click on and drill down and just find what within that million hours of audio they're actually looking for. So that's one thing that we've built that is going to change the world because, it's the only way ever developed to search massive amounts of audio.
Does this have applications in security or is it more for a lot of other applications about
Oh
learning?
yeah, you get popped. What do you do? What's the first thing you do after there's a hack?
Panic. Most
Panic,
people.
and then you go and you download all the. Well, actually, is Scott on right now?
Yeah. Hey, Scott's
Yep,
here.
I am here.
And Scott, I just have to say, I love the lighting in the background you got going on right now. I really do.
Thank you.
It looks awesome.
Thank you.
So
yeah, normally
rather
you can
than trying to tell your
see
business,
John
why don't you do
and
it?
I on Security and Compliance Weekly Tuesdays at noon. But seeing that John was coming on and doing the interview with you guys, I figured, hey, why not? Let's jump in together and knock this out.
It's awesome.
Hey. So the question was, this system, how does it work for security? And the answer is you got to download all the network data after there's a hack, and then you need a way to navigate through it and find sort of similarities and patterns that are going to be useful. And so that is definitely another application of what AGNES technology can do.
Yeah, realistically, if I can tack onto that, it's really about finding the needle in the haystack, right? The way that AGNES is putting this out here, and if you want to check this tech out for yourself, demo.agnesintel.com, the way that this works is by force multiplying what you're looking for in the quickest fashion possible. So if you walk through a scenario, right, where you're an opposing counsel, you've got 6 weeks until you're at trial, whoever's coming after your client has given you 500,000 emails, and I'm just choosing a number, right? Walk with me. You're going to spend every waking hour of every person at the firm to go through this and find 85% of what you need, right? But with this technology, you take that entire 6-week time span of multiple paralegals, multiple interns, multiple whoever, and take that down to an hour. And that is groundbreaking stuff. Plus, no longer are you looking at an 85% success rate. Now you're looking at a 99.4, 99.5 success rate every single time. No more is the theory of let's bury him in paperwork. That's gone, right?
Oh yeah.
And the great thing is that this tech, and I've been working with John on this now for a minute. The tech can be used in security to force multiply finding the needle in the haystack using unstructured AI/ML.
So, John, but there's a lot of companies doing, and we talked about it on the previous segment too. Every security most security companies, right, have some type of AI. They're either calling it outright artificial intelligence or branding into some of the subcomponents within artificial intelligence, right? They're calling it machine learning. They're calling it neural networks. They're calling it deep learning, whatever the case may be. And there are a small percentage, from what I've observed in my time in this industry up till now, is there are a small percentage that are doing it really, really well and finding really awesome use cases. How do we, as security professionals that are looking for solutions to our problems, identify vendors that are going, this is AI? How do we separate the wheat from the chaff, basically? John, you still there? I know John's
Is he on mute?
I see him waving his hand.
Oh,
there we
no.
go.
I was told that AGNES is getting picked up when I'm not talking, so I muted my microphone. Question is how to separate the wheat from the chaff.
Yes.
Well, I would start with, with any kind of data science, the first rule of data science is you start at the end, right? What question am I trying to answer?
Right.
And so I always ask when somebody says I have an AI, I always say, okay, what question are you trying to answer? And if it's a big and valuable and expensive question that they name, then that's a pretty good sign. The next question is, where's the data that answer lives in? Okay, and if they know where the answer is and they know what the question is, then the third question is, okay, what data tools are you going to use to tease that out and tease the answer out of the pile of data?
Right.
And if they can answer those three questions in a cogent way, then you probably have a good piece of AI.
And what's interesting, John, is that I go back to ransomware against healthcare systems, right? It actually just happened to a local healthcare facility here in Rhode Island. And the first question I had, and I'm sure the first question on their minds was, first, start with the statement of someone was able to break into our systems and encrypt some of our data, right? The first question I have, certainly as a patient or as a forensic analyst, is if they had access to the data, did they exfiltrate that data? And if so, which data did they exfiltrate? And, being able to distinguish between, access and exfiltration and knowing if that happened or not, I think is very, not just important for the company, but important for the patients. How do I know that my data wasn't exfiltrated somewhere else before it was encrypted, right? And that's just one use case that I think is very interesting to apply these techniques to.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to unshare it. Let's see.
Well,
Settings.
so if you're gonna pick up on data exfiltration, right? A lot of companies have a really serious issue with being able to tag and bag their own data as it stands, right? So trying to throw a technology like AI/ML at it is going to be extremely difficult if you haven't done your groundwork. So having a very robust DLP solution is really where you want to start, not AI/ML. Even though AI/ML is new, it's shiny, it's sexy. It's not DLP.
You said DLP,
right?
And every time you said that, I threw up in my mouth a little bit.
Well, you know what? DLP, okay? So there's that, okay?
There's a little more for you.
Oh, man. Don't get us started.
So, it's one thing to be able to tag and bag and categorize your data, right? And then use an AI/ML structured or unstructured method to be able to show where that data has been going, right? But it's another thing to actually know what you have. On Security and Compliance Weekly, we've run into this problem numerous times with people that have come on and said, well, if you understand your data, and the real question is where do you start with your data? Where do you start with that bagging and tagging, right? How do you define the quote unquote crown jewels of the environment, right? If you can put monitoring on those, right, you're ahead of the game.
Knowing where it is and where it lives is part of the question, right, John? That you were to your earlier point of knowing what questions to ask in the application of AI, right? To Scott's point, I like your analogy of bagging and tagging, right? Like knowing can you classify? Do you have to classify it on your own, or do you use AI and ML to help you classify it, or both?
So let me just give a little bit of background on AI, just so that we can kind of get our taxonomy right. Obviously, AI is a huge topic that covers everything from predictive systems to self-driving cars. Typically, where we work is in the area of classical machine learning, of which there are two types. There's supervised and there's unsupervised. Almost everybody that does machine learning is going to be doing supervised. That's where you take a whole bunch of labeled data, you feed it into a system, it builds a model, and then the system basically classifies items into two or more boxes. Examples of that in the legal system, they actually do something called technology-assisted review, where they try to distinguish between irrelevant and relevant documents, and they can get to about 80%. Where AGNES lives, and I don't know, honestly, I don't know any other companies. There may be others, but I don't know of them. We do unsupervised machine learning, which is machine learning that detects patterns in enormous amounts of data. The benefit of unsupervised machine learning, there are several. The biggest benefit is that it doesn't require training sets, and it doesn't require forward deployment engineers. and therefore it can be deployed at scale. And basically, it has a economic model that's much more like a SaaS software model than a like a Palantir.
Gotcha. Jeff Lee, questions for John along these lines? And
I got a question for you guys.
Yes,
if nobody
please
has
do.
A question. I got one for you guys.
Yeah.
So I'm actually preparing as I've told you, I'm a lawyer, so I'm preparing a client alert for a bunch of law firms, and the question is, should lawyers be advising their clients to record Zoom calls? If so, why? Or if not, why not? What do you guys think? So you're a company, you have 1,000 employees, they're spending 5 hours a day on Zoom saying God knows what. And do you want to instruct your IT department to automatically store a copy of every Zoom call that your company has?
I will answer a question with a question, John, and say, is it legal for me to do that, given the laws about wiretapping that are sometimes, from what I understand, on a state-by-state basis? What are the legalities in...
We put a big red bar across the top saying you're being recorded, so everybody agrees. I think that gets us past that.
And that's all that you need to do to get you past that?
Yeah.
It has to be but it has to be in the Zoom call.
If anybody out there is facing an actual conundrum, go talk to a lawyer in your own jurisdiction. My understanding is that would be sufficient because it gives people notice and informed consent.
I love that's the attorney answer. If there's a question, go talk to a lawyer in your jurisdiction. I love that, John.
Just don't sue me for malpractice because you heard me on a podcast and I did what Snyder said.
I knew what he said. I put the banner up on everyone's Skype calls that said your call is being recorded. John said it was good, so therefore,
not legal advice. Don't sue me.
But anyone could sue anyone for that theoretically.
Anybody can sue anybody for anything.
Right. In the U.S.? How does that does that translate into? Well, no, but that's another question. What if you're a corporation and it's an international corporation and you want to record Zoom calls? You also have to consult with the laws in the countries that you're doing business in. Is that correct?
Yeah. You have to comply with GDPR if you're in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting really complicated and. If there are young, soon-to-be lawyers out there listening to this, become really good at cybersecurity law because you will always have a job.
I agree. But my question is, why would you? I own Evil Corp, and Evil Corp has 100,000 employees across multiple countries. Why would I want to record everyone's Zoom calls? What would be the benefit of that, I guess, is my question.
Can I tell you a story?
Yeah, please do.
I'm going to tell you a story about the last case I tried. It was back last year. And so the two parties, my client and the other side, had communicated by text message. And I asked my client for a copy of the text messages. He said, I don't have them. So I said to the other side, we don't have them. So then the other side said, that's okay. And they produced to me their version of the text messages. Okay. And so those were the text messages, and everybody kind of assumed that was what they were. And we proceeded on that assumption. Well, as it turns out, my client found his version of the text messages. And he says, I didn't realize, but I still had my phone and they were still on, and I actually have them. So I got them out and I looked at the two side by side. The other side, when they knew that I didn't have a copy, I didn't have a control copy, they went in and changed the text message. They literally went in with Photoshop and changed the text messages. And there was no way to tell. So it was only by pure luck that I found that other set of text messages, and I compared them, and then I wrote to the judge, and I, said, clearly they've engaged in evidence fraud and should have their case thrown out. And the judge didn't do anything. Well, the judge said we couldn't use the text messages, but that was all that happened. But the moral of the story is, with a Zoom call, well, the moral of the story is keep your own set of data. So now let me ask this. If you're on a Zoom call, do you have any reason to believe that your call is not being recorded? I mean, do you have any way to assure that? Of course not. So,
I assume,
Actually,
only
you
because
do.
we're security people, and I'm not sure that everyone makes this assumption outside of...
I can tape it on my phone.
Right, outside of
Yeah,
InfoSec, right? People don't make this assumption, and John, you bring up a very good point, that everything that I'm putting on the internet is being recorded and stored forever by someone, right?
Somewhere.
And when you talk sometimes to your family and friends, they'll be like, "Oh, on Snapchat, it's okay because it just goes out and then it's deleted and people can't screenshot it." And what I very quickly point out is exactly what you just said, John. I'm like, what about the person sitting over that person's shoulder that's taking pictures of that, right? Because we think like hackers. And I'm like, if it's displayed somewhere, someone can capture that, whether they're a third party or not. So I assume that everything you're putting out is what I tell my kids all the time, that it's being captured and stored forever, right? And that's the assumption we have to run under.
Now let's look at the other standpoint, okay? If you're a company, and now let's imagine that you're a scumbag and dishonest and very smart, okay? I'm a company, you're suing me, and I say I don't have any Zoom calls because I don't store Zoom calls. Tell me exactly what is to stop you from making a deep fake of the company CEO saying anything you want. Making it like you took it off your phone, so the quality, you're not going to be able to, detect the deep fake that way. What are you going to do?
But John, this is a huge privacy debate. So what you're saying, I'm not saying you're saying this, but if I infer from this that if I have a company that I have to increase my surveillance and recording of employee behavior such that I have a record that can prove employees wrong that want to falsify data.
I believe that if you don't record your Zoom calls, you're asking for a lot of trouble.
But that's exactly what I
Yeah.
was just saying, is that if I as the company don't record everyone's Zoom calls, that if I don't, someone can falsify data and try and sue the company.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's kind of scary, actually, from a privacy standpoint. I don't know that I want to be responsible for recording everyone's Zoom calls. What is the onus of responsibility for me capturing and storing that data, right? GDPR is one, as you stated, right?
Okay, so I'm not a GDPR expert, so I'm not going to talk about that. I'm pretty comfortable with American law, and there's no duty one way or the other. So if you're a company, it's up to you at this point. There may be regulation someday, but think about it. I mean, do companies store their emails?
Mm-hmm.
Why do they do that?
Discoverability.
Plausible deniability, right? Is essentially what we're saying.
For discovery.
Well, for a bunch of reasons. It's just the operational record of the company.
Mm-hmm.
For one thing. For another thing, it's useful for data mining if companies have the right tools. Most don't. And the third reason is exactly like, the text message story I just told you.
Mm-hmm.
If you get sued, you want to have your own set of emails so that you're not dependent on somebody else who, is going to give you the emails that favor them and take out the bad emails, right?
Mm.
Right. Well, we do that for discovery.
It gets deeper too. I mean, because I guarantee you, in the next 3 to 5 years, some CEO is going to get caught on a Zoom call saying something, horrific,
or exposing something horrific.
it could be anything. And you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, wasn't me. It was a deep fake. Prove me wrong.
Right.
Right. So there's another aspect of the recording thing that I've been in conversations about, and that is, where is it stored and who has access to that recording? For example, with WebEx, there's a couple of different data centers that you can have your recordings stored at, or you can store them locally. And if they're in the data center, you've got both Americans and foreign nationals with access to those recordings. So how do you know that they're not tampered with or haven't been exfiltrated?
It's more data for us as a corporation to protect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did some figuring. I said if you have a 250 employee company that does, 5 hours a day, 4 hours a day, that's 1,000 gigs a day or a terabyte a day, roughly. Every year it'd be about a quarter of a petabyte. It's not actually that much.
But how long do you need to store communications records?
Well, you know what? I think about it. If you're a company and let's say you got a big company, hundreds of employees, and you're making a pitch, you're putting together a proposal for McDonnell Douglas or Boeing or whoever, some big company. Wouldn't it be interesting to go over all of the Zoom calls for the last year of your company and just search for the word Boeing and see what people have been saying about it? Who knows? Maybe somebody's actually in contact with the head of procurement and you didn't even know it. Right? I mean, it's not just legal protection, though it is. It's also knowledge management and business intelligence. So people who have the capability to know, I mean, imagine if you were the CEO of a company and you were offered the ability to have godlike omniscience and to know what was said in every meeting that your company has ever had or has had in the last 3 years.
This feels really creepy, John, from a privacy standpoint. Or do we?
I'm just bringing up the tech, and listen. The reason that I mean, there are definitely creepy sides to it, and part of my mission as a proponent of AI and a developer of AI is to really kind of communicate to the public what it is we're doing, how we're doing it, and then we should have a conversation as a society about what we want to do with AI and what we don't want to do with AI. And that starts with explaining it and making it understood what we do.
It's
is there a
interesting
trust factor?
Well, but it's interesting to think about when you work for a company and you sign the agreement that says, maybe it says all communications through all company provided services and software will be recorded and monitored. Are we all okay with that? Is it always clear? And what are the ramifications of that?
Well, if you work for me and you're on Zoom and you're making statements, you are exposing me to liability every word you say. Right? And I am responsible for what you do. So, no, you don't have an expectation of privacy because, again, you're writing checks that I'm going to have to cash. And, look, I'd rather have a big red, bar across my screen saying you're being recorded and, then I know, then, I kind of, I'm just, snapping towels and saying stupid things and then it ends up on Twitter.
But what's interesting, though, is when we think about full packet capture, right, is there a bar across your web browser that says all of your TCP/IP communications are being recorded and monitored, right? There isn't. Yeah. Is that different from video and chat?
Well, I mean, what you're talking about is more comprehensive. So maybe there should be, but
right, because I can put together any conversation that happens over the network, theoretically.
Right. But you got to watch the wiretap laws, too. Even though it's VoIP, the wiretap laws are still in play. Now, chat, that's a little different. But
Which is astonishing, though. But Lee, you bring up a great point. When do the wiretap laws apply to chat and Zoom versus VoIP communications, or does it? John, I'm looking to you for clarification.
You're asking for a legal.
I'm asking for right?
I'm going to tell you, it's a complicated question. I'm sure if it's not been litigated, it's probably going to be litigated in the courts over the next few years. So I'm not really equipped to give a substantive legal answer to that question, other than to say it's a moving target, and as technology evolves, the law is going to also have to evolve.
Mm. I would venture to guess that your employee agreements cover this, right? I mean, do you have to put a thing across everyone's screen in every communications channel that says you're being recorded, or in the employee agreement, there's a statement that says your communications may or may not be monitored, for these reasons, right, or whatever? And do you have to even give a reason, or just say, look, your communications be monitored for corporate assets, right?
Well, there's many industries where, because of regulation, you have no choice. You have to tape calls.
Right.
So, like Wall Street trading floors, those are all recorded. Mm-hmm. And many others as well. Most banks record. Most sales organizations record. For training purposes.
Right. Well, it says that when you call in, right, for customer support or sales.
So
right?
I sort of want to throw a crimp in all y'all style, right? What if, for argument's sake, right? You go and you record a conversation, and then you transcribe it and delete the recording. Is that covered under wiretapping, technically speaking?
I doubt it.
Why?
But I would.
I love these questions, by the way.
Yeah.
But Scott brings a great point, because
if you just followed somebody around and just wrote down what they said, there's no law against that. I think it's the invasion of privacy that comes with actually recording your voice.
Is the attribution of your voice
led to those laws?
Is it the attribution of your voice? There can be a transcript that says Scott or Paul said this, versus a voice recording where the attribution is unmistakable. But if it's a digital or analog recording of what Scott and Paul said, there is a likelihood that could be tampered with more easily and not attributed to Scott or Paul or whatever, right?
Right. So why don't you take the voices down about 2 octaves, and that way you can't provide the attribution. We see that all the time with recordings on TV from people that don't want to be recorded.
True. Yes.
Well, I've seen other things where that policy is that if you're joining a meeting that's being recorded and you don't want to be recorded, don't join the meeting. Mm-hmm. And it's up on the host to make sure everybody's clear, even with the banner, that it is or is not being recorded.
So you're telling to extrapolate on what you're saying, Lee, and to mung everything together, what you're saying is whenever you step into a video call, you always have to take your own protection and make sure that your video is off prior to joining the call, right? Otherwise, you're susceptible to being recording, having your face on the video attributed with your voice, right? I mean, there are some common protection things here.
Right. Look out for yourself. But if it's company policy to record it, that's a whole... That just throws that on the side, doesn't it?
Well, you can record it, and then the question is, what do you do with it? And this is a dilemma that comes up with body cams as well. Many police departments have body-worn cameras, and they have to negotiate with the union over, we're going to use this for evidentiary reasons, but we're not going to use it for, discipline. So there's going to be I don't imagine that, under a policy that the HR is going to be sending you an email every time you say something off color. I mean, you got to handle these things and use them, not in an overbearing way, or people will resent it.
Right,
So
but a lot of people,
you know,
a lot of people don't understand that what you do outside of a corporation reflects the corporation, right? And in most corporate agreements, they say, sure, your time is your time, but anything you do outside may affect what what you're perceived at inside of the corporation, especially if it's tracked back, right? So if you're out doing, I don't know, throwing a Molotov cocktail at a car, right? That's going to track back. I mean, more often than not, look, the reality is with everything that's going on in the country now, more oftentimes than not, IA or Internal Affairs is looking at the buffer space on the cameras, right? On these cameras that are mass produced, that are not secure, in my own humble opinion, right? Not representing PSW, Security Weekly, Red Lion, AGNES, anybody else associated with this. My own personal opinion, these things are not secure. Right?
I will back you up on that because my good friend, many people's good friends, Kevin, actually bought some body cameras off of eBay or some other such site and was able to pull the footage from them.
Right. And I want to get
I mean to reach out to Kevin. I want to get him on the show to talk about that. It's interesting, John, that you mentioned the body cameras and how the footage is used.
Time out.
What's happened after
Kevin?
Their end of life is a different discussion, right?
Which Kevin?
Kevin Finstare.
Okay. Yeah, I really want to see a report of 10 of these cameras handed to hackers and said, go for it, right?
Yeah, well, some were handed to one named Kevin, and footage, it didn't look like that much trouble for Kevin. Well, I mean, he's Kevin, so it wasn't that much trouble. But
you're telling me it wasn't flown sideways like it was, like it had wings or something, right?
That would be his drone research, which is different, but...
There are a lot of ideas that are floating around about how to fix everything that's going on in society right now. And the biggest problem is that technology has run so far ahead of what's going on in society that both the legal and the police industry haven't been able to keep up, right? So if you're coming with a product that does AI stuff, right, you're able to bridge some of the gap, right? But the main underlying issue is that we're still working on antiquated laws, right, and antiquated government leanings that haven't caught up with tech.
Yeah,
right?
But I mean, let's separate this into buckets, right? There's violation of the law as a citizen, right? There's violation of company policy, and what types of surveillance are permittable in each of those circumstances, right? If I'm a employee of company XYZ and violating the law, what is the legal limits of what a company can do, based on my behavior outside of work? Is that a company policy thing, John? Is that a criminal law thing, or some intersection of the two?
So... on one level, it's a contract issue. You hire me to be your employee. Generally, I'm terminable at will. And so if you get tired of my face, you can fire me. If you don't like my politics, you can fire me. Now, there's some laws that apply. You can't fire people for bad reasons, like their race or certain other categories.
So, wrongful termination is really meant for racism and discrimination, more so than criminal activity or some such thing, right?
Or if you're a whistleblower, you can't fire somebody because they're a whistleblower. There's a bunch of reasons you're not supposed to fire people.
There's tried case law for those types of scenarios, correct?
Yeah. So you're talking more about, what are you talking about, like outside stuff that people are getting fired for that?
Yeah, like I go on social media and maybe I'm part of a protest, maybe I'm expressing opinions, maybe I'm supporting someone, maybe I'm doing something that maybe criminal activity may not be, right? Is that, now the company is monitoring my social media activities, whether that's through company networks or maybe that's outside of company networks because they're monitoring social media, right? All of these are issues of monitoring employees, and I may be monitoring employees to see if they're being, hacked into or whatever. It may threaten corporate data, but maybe I'm discovering other activities as part of those other investigations, right?
So there's a lot of capabilities that a company has to surveil its own workers that didn't exist 5 or 10 or 20 years ago.
Correct. Yes.
Email. Email itself was a pretty big invasion of privacy, right? Because now the company knows everything you're writing to your wife, probably, if you don't use a separate account.
Right, through corporate email, right? I mean, it's under the assumption that corporate email is readable by the corporation you're working for. I mean, that's been the case for 20 plus years.
Can I tell you what wasn't always obvious? Like, I remember when I first got an email, and I didn't necessarily think that the company, maybe the company wasn't even looking at it. I don't even know. But now they certainly are.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Well, the reason that companies are looking at emails is because it's a breach infection path, right? Breach/infection path, right? So number one, they have to look at it for that reason, right? Spam filters and so on and so forth are prevalent, right? So how do you protect the company while allowing them to do what they need to do to make sure that you can keep a roof over your head, right? What is the adequate amount of spend for the adequate amount of protection inside of which vertical is the business in, right? And so email is just one of many avenues, unfortunately, that attackers can use, right? Another one is social engineering, right? And whether that's through email, that's through phone, or that's through text message, Twitter, it is what it is.
Did you guys see yesterday on Twitter all those verified accounts?
We did.
And they said,
Yeah.
It was pretty wild. You realize that person, whoever did that, I mean, that was a pretty, I would say, benign thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
but John, I guess that kind of is a good segue into my next question, right? Like, if you're a company and you're monitoring employee social media activities to detect and basically prevent them from malicious actors, right? You're trying to protect your employees from malicious actors by monitoring their social media. And we can debate whether that's a corporate social media account or a personal one, right? It's very hard to tell the difference in a lot of cases. But then HR gets involved, right? And it's like, well, if they're posting negative things about the company and there tends to be a pattern, can that employee be terminated based on that monitoring? And that's in this whole train of discussion that we've been on for the past 10 or 15 minutes, right? That's where I want to know from a legal standpoint, both from a corporation and an employee, like, where do the lines fall where an employee could be terminated? There was a healthcare worker, right, that was terminated for posting really heinous things about, their employer and or HIPAA violations, right? Because they have to monitor for that too. Like, where do the lines fall between what you can monitor for and what you can terminate an employee for or not?
If it's an at-will employee, you can terminate them for any reason.
Right.
If you otherwise, if you have an employment contract, the contract will say what your duties are, and generally it'll say if you substantially fail to fulfill your duties, or if you do something that's deleterious to the company, they can fire you. It's generally, unless you're part of a collective bargaining unit, you have very few protections. Now, California, it's different. Some states are different. But generally speaking, if you're an at-will employee, you can be fired for any reason.
Right.
That's the way I understood it as well.
Yeah, and it raises a lot of issues because, should your employee fire you if you're conservative or if you're liberal, or, can they fire you because they don't like your politics? Can they fire you if they think you're racist, even if what you're saying isn't literally racist? There's a whole lot of questions.
But it sounds like in this particular case, right, it kind of favors the employer, in terms of their ability to terminate an employee.
Are you speaking with respect to the recording of the Zoom calls, or just generally?
No, just like generally, if let's say a company observes what an employee is saying on social media, they don't like that, they can terminate that employee. They don't necessarily need to have a case against that. They can terminate an employee.
Oh my God, it's it. What was it? I just saw somebody. Okay, there was a high-level academic. It was maybe a dean or a provost who had to resign because he had funded research that had come to the conclusion that once you correct for a bunch of other factors, police shootings are not motivated by race. That was the finding of the study. And people didn't like the conclusion of the study because it went against, a narrative.
Social norms and narratives. Yep.
And so this provost, he didn't even write the article. He'd funded the study, not knowing what the study was going to conclude. And so he got fired, and then the two researchers who had written the article, even though no methodological problem had been found, they still went ahead and retracted the article.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I mean that happened. That happened at a public university. So actually, my guess is because it's a public university. They're bound by the First Amendment, and I suspect that guy's going to sue, and he'll probably win.
Interesting. Well, John, your perspective on the legal aspect has been fascinating. I think when we bring you on for future segments, we want to talk about some things more cybersecurity related, because I really want to delve into disclosure and those kinds of legal aspects, just to give you a heads up. But we'll reserve that until the next time. It was wonderful having you on Paul Security Weekly. We just have 5 questions for you that we ask of all of our new guests on Paul Security Weekly. Are you ready to play 5 questions with Paul Security Weekly?
I'm ready as I'll ever be. Go for it.
John, 3 words to describe yourself.
Optimistic, energetic, and passionate.
If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
Kinetic bombardment, rod from God.
If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be? I feel like that could be the same answer to number 2, which would also be a great answer for question number 3. But
the art of the algorithm.
In the popular game of Ask Grabby Grabby, do you prefer to go first or second?
Oh, I go first.
Choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
Alive, dead, fictional, or otherwise.
All right. For my dad, Ving Rhames. For my mom, Jeff Bezos's ex-wife.
John, thank you very much for appearing on Paul Security Weekly.
Thank you.
With that, we'll take a short break. Come back for the news for this week. Stay tuned.